British Empire, no less great tides of historical change were in motion. Ideas were spreading throughout all peoples of the empire. Old certainties and assumptions were being questioned by both the ruled and their rulers. Subject peoples saw their own place in the world, and saw the world as it was. The imperial belief in a duty to educate and improve actually undermined the empire, creating leaders among its subject people who were able to argue in the language and culture of the British. Some British slowly realized that their days of mastery were numbered.
A powerful theme in the fall, what I call the mythology of the fall of the British Empire, is that the key attribute to their losing their imperial control was the fruit that was born from all the benevolent and dutiful and unselfish deeds that they had done for the people that were in that they always referred to as citizens or subjects of the empire, glossing over the notion that they're not willing, they're not British. One thing, a perfect example that this they don't mention, and they don't mention Scotland at all in this. And I'm going to take this a bit by bit as opposed to just do one final commentary. The main notion, this is going to go into further, it's going to continue to reiterate that that Britain continued to lose pieces of the empire because of the education that it provided to particular individuals that then, which interestingly enough, and this goes all the way to the founding fathers, and I say that the part of the British mythology is that America won its independence, there's no evidence, there's no real evidence that ever happened. When you take into account the way that Britain traditionally has ruled all of its things, like Australia, that at some point it gets into saying, but the people that always end up coming into power and taking the whatever control away from Britain are lawyers, are members of the bar or barrier society association. So and that's a very powerful force, and I think one of the best examples, some in Americas, for the best examples, I'll give you three very good examples. One, it was the Bar Association and the Bar Society. It's actually a society, which I equate to the barrier between that separates the ruling from the ruled, and it's a class of what equate to sellout people, but on a psychological level, they're very demented, and they're the most depraved of the Stockholm syndrome, believing that if they can fully absorb themselves into the ruling class, that they have a stance in it, but that makes them far more ruthless than the British have to be themselves. So this is a very powerful element of governance of foreign of human beings. Forget all this stupid, crazy bullshit nation state shit. It's a human thing. And the British language, you understand, they still do not use, they're going to talk shit later about Japan's view of their subjugated people and stuff like that, and how they're sneaky Japanese, talking about freedom, trick some of the British people to support the Japanese in certain places that they had conquered. Okay. I bet you nobody that was under the rule of Japan had any misinterpretations that Japan was there to liberate. Ask the Philippines, ask Nanking, ask Korea. So the white people could have got it wrong. But it comes down to they can't speak a human language. They're always speaking a British language, and this reveals their true intent. And the most important thing moving forward on this is to remember that in 1913, when the Federal Reserve Act was passed with just 12 U.S. senators, 12 is a very significant number too, with just 12 U.S. senators in a Christmas vacation hearing that were able to vote in a lawful act that put a private corporation that's 95% owned by British interests in total control of the United States money supply. And then 6 months earlier, under the guise of helping prohibition, implementing an income tax law. So that meaning the relation between those two things is that prior to the notion of income tax being asserted on all corporate activity, the American public weren't subject to paying income tax because income is only a result of corporate activity. But with the passing 6 months later, at the Christmas hearing, at the Christmas vacation vote, where they passed, and it is not how this has stood for 75 years is not a mystery. It's not a mystery. It's very evident, and the intention is very obvious too. That they were able to, they went past the Federal Reserve Act, and then you had after that you had the crash, which instituted Roosevelt to what? Take all the gold away at force, at gunpoint, at literal gunpoint from every person. If you didn't bring every speck of gold, you were subject to potentially 5 years in jail and a $500 fine. And what was it, 1929 or something like that? So so when they take the gold, it's only through what happens in World War II. This is an important thing to note, that finally the total implementation, the total circulation of Federal Reserve notes is accomplished within the United States economy. And again, it is important to note that the fall of the British Empire meant the rise of the American economy, if you want to call it that. If you want to be nice, Obama's called it the empire in the Fort Bragg speech. Unlike empires of old, America didn't do it. This is a direct quote. Unlike empires from Barack Obama in his Fort Bragg speech at the end of Iraq War. Unlike empires of old, America didn't do it. Blah 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 blah. Goes on, but he equates America to an empire. But we just call it an economy for peon's sake, for the infantile, juvenilistic mind that can't face reality and needs to hear some delusional notion that it's just about fair business and fair markets and stupid shit like that. So, but with the total implementation of the Federal Reserve notes into every facet of every single American's life, so that every time an American passes a Federal Reserve note to one American to the next American, when you pay your kids in the Federal Reserve notes, which are again privately owned by Britain, and their interest bearing, you're only passing on a debt which is a corporate activity because you're using a corporation's private property. Just like the East India Trading Company, basically it's the East India Trading Company in a bank format. It's a pirate bank. So every facet of financial activity that happens amongst Americans, which that's a myth too, but that's too far to grasp right now, becomes corporate activity, and therein you have the implementation of income tax. When? Because income tax didn't get implemented 6 months later after 1913. Income tax didn't get implemented in the 20s or in the 30s. Income tax didn't kick in until the 1940s. Why? At the same time that the Federal Reserve notes took full circulation. What the hell is the Federal Reserve? It's a private corporation. So every time we're trading this shit and we're getting paid in it and we're accepting payment in it, we're doing corporate activity, and that makes us legally liable in some stupid mythological William Paley social contract. A citizen doesn't have it's irrelevant for the citizen to know what the hell is going on. By the mere participation, they are subjugating themselves and admitting that they're part of it. when you buy a piece of property with the Federal Reserve note, you're relinquishing the right you have to that property to the Federal Reserve. And therefore, you owe the Federal Reserve for that property. You don't have to understand it. It don't make sense. That's fine. Diddly squat, whatever the fuck you want to do. But the truth is, the entire rise, the backing away of the British Empire and the use of central banking, and it should be noted, the only central banks in the world that are not directly connected to the Bank of London, if I'm not mistaken, these are it, that's all, there's no other ones. And there are a couple, the ones for sure, undoubtedly, are North Korea, Cuba, and Iran. Those are indefinitely, 100% undisputedly, completely detached from the City of London Central Bank, which is the World Bank. Okay, those are the only three for sure. Suspected other ones that have high claims are the Central Bank of Russia. And if you think China is not part of this, look, you stupid, freaking idiotic, stupid, uneducated, dipshit pieces of shit. Cash and communism do not fucking go together. For China to be one of the richest nations on the planet now, making money, there's no such thing as communism. It was always a fucking hoax in order to facilitate what? The war machine. What did the war machine do? Make America spend more money. What happens when America spends more money? Britain recuperates. Britain was destroyed after World War II. What did they lost their land. Oh, okay, America didn't let them. What did they recreate in order to reestablish their economy? What did they start exporting? What did they start manufacturing? Did they do Intel? Did they do new technologies? Did they expand manufacturing? Oh, they did all the same shit. They got mining. They stole gold from even poorer people. They stole islands. So none of that shit changed. But in the context, America has done everything that we've done, has profited, has been not just at the cost of the lives of Americans and the brutality of the people that we've psychotically fucking massacred, but it's been to the financial gain and reestablishment of the Crown of England towards the perpetual poverty in America, just like in England, because they don't give a rat's shit about their subjects. That's the very fucking notion of a relationship between a king and his people. All this nice myth story of a one good king out of 1,000, or once in a while this guy, or they're supposed to be trained in this shit. They're trained to rule and dominate subjugated people who are like cattle, and that's it. If you're a king and you see your people as people, then you become like that one king in England that stepped the fuck down. Because you can't be a king when you recognize the humanity in the people that you're ruling over. Just like you can't be a central banker in the same notion. Because here's the catch too. They make a big point about the provinces and the proxy states were ruled by governors appointed by the crown. Now the Central Bank of America, the Federal Reserve Note, is owned by them. Okay, so we like delusional think. First of all, the Electoral College picks the president, and if we didn't learn through the Bush candidacies that Bush elections that it doesn't freaking matter. The president, that's a whole nother thing. But there's no Americans don't vote. American citizens on the most democratic country do not vote. It's not a vote for vote. And there's a reason for that. It's called control. It's called regulation. And you're going to have a large portion, which is a minority, but still a vast minority because they're a white minority. And that a white minority of a 272 million is a pretty big minority. And that's the conservative ones who are scared to, because they hold on to the Electoral College thinking that it gives them some kind of access to a greater power, less the minorities, which are only about 70 million people at the max out of 319 million. But that's how fucking crazy and stupid they are. That's why they don't teach math. Because if they see it, then it doesn't make any sense. black people can't be 16% of the population if 272 out of 319 are frickin' white, according to the 2010 census. So, but the president is irrelevant, okay? Because it's the central banker, it's the head banker, it's the Alan Greenspan, it's the Ben Bernanke, it's the Timothy Geithner kind of person who controls the debt of the nation, who manufactures the debt of the nation, who drives up the debt of the nation, which in turn profits the owners of the central bank, which is London. So I'm going to dissect some more of this, but I wanted to go on that little tangent.
Russia emerged from the war strengthened as the two superpowers that would dominate the world in the coming decades. Britain emerged from the war weakened, bankrupt, and industrially destroyed. The USA was, in its very act of creation, a rejection of the British Empire, having fought a war of independence. One clause of the Charter declared the right of all peoples to choose the form of government under which they live. Churchill, the die-hard imperialist, argued, reasoned, blustered, raged, and in the end pleaded with Roosevelt that this clause should exclude the British Empire. The American was immovable. America did not believe its young men fought and died in the Solomon Islands to see the British simply reclaim their Pacific Island colonies. America was privately furious that Hong Kong's governor, on his liberation by Americans, quickly ran up the Union Jack, restoring the status quo in the British colony. Old-fashioned, pompous and weak. The world could see that America plotted the path to the future. In 1945, America became the preeminent power in the post-war world. Economic strength meant America bankrolled Britain, and hence the empire. The vast markets that the empire offered. When the war ended, a strong US economy stepped into the place of a worn-out Britain and supplied even more goods that Britain could not.
And spread the Federal Reserve notes around the world, making it the global currency of business. Again, every single one of those notes providing the only profit, the sole profit, to the owners of it, which are England. The wealth of America is just debt. Just like the income of most Americans is just debt.
The empire would come to live only in memory.
So this is the phenomena, this is the amazing psychological nut job that goes with all these Americans that promote and promulgate the notion of increased military spending. Okay? Because every dollar that's spent, every federal dollar's here's another thing too. A dollar is a misnomer. They're not dollars. They're Federal Reserve notes. They're promissory notes. They're not promissory notes that when I give it to you, I'm going to give you $1 worth of anything. The promissory note is when I give it to you, we promise to pay some type of interest, whether some people speculate it's 6%, but that's probably a very nice conservative estimation, considering the historical psychosis of the people of Britain and their ruling class. So the promissory note now represents, I promise to accept a debt associated with my right to use this as a means of saying, hey, this is a payment. Or when you give it to me, when I accept it, this is the reverse thing. It doesn't stop. This is how stupid. This is all William Paley. The duty of submission to civil government, 1788. This is the method of ruling a nation. This is outlined in Plato's Republic. This is outlined in Machiavelli's The Prince. This is the whole entire notion of the art of war. The art of war. America is blanketed over the world, increasing our debt daily and servituding, if you want to call it slavery, because slavery has kind of distorts the motion, but in servituding our future generations to the debt which we are accumulating with every federal note that we use in order to bolster national security, which in turn just provides England more financial security. So, how many different ways to say it? The War of Independence was a sham, and the hardest thing to get to grips is that the Founding Fathers were basically like the King of Scotland. Put it like this: the Founding Fathers. This is the hard thing, okay? The way the Founding Fathers saw blacks and women is the general consensus of how they saw Americans, if that helps you. And the proof of that, though that could be contested, it's some stupid, sentimental, deranged, whatever, the Whiskey Rebellion. George Washington, the first domestic activity of the newly formed free United States government was to rally more United States troops than he used in the entire war for the War of Independence against the whiskey farmers, the farmers of Pennsylvania and the Northeast. Bloody massacre. They don't say this publicly because they want to call it the first Civil War. It was just a freaking massacre. You have a massive army going up. It's insane. But that was George Washington. That's where you get posse comitatus from. Posse comitatus, which has already been debunked over and over and over and over, and now it's codified in the National Defense Authorization Act, which has the military the right to indefinitely detain, can arrest, and can even assassinate American citizens abroad and on the home front, because the war on terror is the entire planet now. But again, the war on terror, what does it do? Bolsters U.S. spending, because right now, what is the British Empire doing? The British Empire is bankrolling America by making our spending go through the roof and spreading poverty over in order to just, take care of their people? No, because their people are going dirt poor too. To take care of their crown. It's a spending spree.